to the man and the legend, 74-year-old Buddy D, dead of a heart attack. Don in Laplace, thank you so much for calling.
My condolences to you all and to his family. Man, as a truck driver around the state of Louisiana, I can't tell you the hours Buddy kept me company. As I drove up and down that highway, man, just to get in my car tonight and hear you all say that, really, I'm stunned by it. I really am. But that's inevitable for all of us. And that's the way life is.
Ain't that the truth? Don, thanks so much for calling.
Thank you, Don. Be safe out there on the roads.
Irvin and Araby, your thoughts about Buddy D?
Man, I'm just glad y'all on tonight, bud.
Well, you know, we were so shocked at first, we didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
And personally, I didn't know if I could do this.
Right.
I didn't know if I could go on the radio and do this. But the more I thought about what an amazing life this man had that needed to be celebrated and talked about. And it's
going to be celebrated all weekend long and probably for the next week.
Yeah.
You know, and you guys need to celebrate it too. What's your best memory of Buddy D?
Oh, man. I mean, people just don't realize how big Buddy D was on the Gulf Coast. But to me as a kid, I remember coming up with Hap Claudy. And when he died, Buddy D just took the reins. And Buddy D's had it for as long as I can remember, you know?
Yeah.
And, I mean, I've always been called the squirrel a couple of times. Sometimes he hung up on me, you know, because I had some crazy ideas about the things. But let me tell you something, man. This has got to be a sign because this year is going to have to be the year for the Saints, brothers.
Well, if ever they needed to have that angel in the corner, I think they've got it now.
I think it is. I hope it is.
Yeah.
Thank you, Irvin.
Hey, good night, y'all.
We appreciate the call. For those of you just joining us, we learned not long ago that Buddy D has passed of an apparent heart attack, dead at the age of 74.
Yeah.
It was shocking to us all, and word is spreading now quickly through the community. You know, just before we went on the air, our phones were ringing off the hook here. People wanted, is it true? Can it really be?
Right.
Has Buddy D died? And
we wanted to, of course, wait until his family had been notified and all of his sons had been notified
Chris,
and
Mike,
been found out. And
his daughters, Katie and Debbie.
Yeah, so that before we went on and said anything. And, of course, we're going to keep this going tonight as just our humble memorial and tribute. Like you said, the sports guys normally would be doing this. They're all at the hospital. They're with Buddy's family right now. There'll be time for them tomorrow and as the week goes on, but they're just all in a state of shock here at WWL. Of course, this is WWL New Orleans, and I don't, you know, if you're listening all across the Gulf Coast, and I know there are a lot of people listening right now that know of Buddy D. He was much bigger than New Orleans. Buddy was the type of personality that he was larger than life on radio and on television, and being on this radio station, he expanded larger than New Orleans and went through the entire Gulf Coast as well. So we have lots of folks who have been calling in all across the area.
You realize Buddy was doing sports in this city for 55 years?
Wow.
55 years this man was involved in the sports community in this city. When he was going to Loyola University, he started writing for the Times-Picayune back in 1950. And it's hard to believe that he's not going to be telling us what we should think about what's going on in sports in this city.
There are a lot of people that are going to be a little confused as to what is going on. You know, so you got to tell it like it is. You're not gonna find many of those types of folks anymore. No. To tell it like it is and to stand up for it.
And when he made a mistake, he was the first one to admit it.
Yes. Yes. He didn't harp on anything. He didn't. But he also didn't, jump on a lot of folks to say, hey, I was right, you were wrong.
No. And we all remember some of his classic, what he called squirrelish moves.
Oh yeah.
You know.
Just let him mention Mike Ditka.
Yeah, I wasn't going to go there. Not now.
He'll be the first. He would have been the first one to say something about that.
Thank you. Sam in Covington.
Hey, how you guys doing?
We're trying, man. I think this is we kind of need this group therapy right now. We need each other.
Well, listen, I used to work there years ago, back in 87, 88.
You remember the first time you met Buddy?
I met Buddy many, many times. I couldn't tell you the first time I met him, but I mean, I worked with Buddy back then, and Hap Glotty and Bernie Lara and all those guys, and I was on the FM station. And I remember when Hap Glotty passed away, and you know what? I am just shocked at the news tonight about Buddy. Buddy is an icon in New Orleans.
Mm-hmm.
And, man, I'm telling you what, a lot of people will make fun of the way Buddy talks, and he has a hard time pronouncing words, but he would be sorely, sorely missed in the sports world in New Orleans.
The story about how one day the typewriter broke.
I was here.
And there was mass pandemonium and chaos because Buddy couldn't use the typewriter.
We were digging through every drawer, every cabinet, every nook and cranny in here to find the ribbon that fit Buddy's typewriter.
And then once you found it, I believe he said no one knew how to change it. So Buddy was in a panic, and one of the girls in the back in the sales office, Celeste, came and fixed it. From then on, Buddy called her the emergency girl. And whenever something was wrong with his typewriter, he'd yell to Mark, get the emergency girl. He couldn't remember her name, but he called her the emergency girl, and then that'll be her title forever now. You call him.
Right here in New Orleans East, Ken.
Hey,
260-1870. You heard tonight that Buddy D died at the age of 74.
Yeah, one of my friends called to tell me I was shot to hear the news, so I immediately turned on the station, and it's just, I guess, therapeutic that you guys are on. So my condolences go out to the whole WWL family, as well as, of course, Buddy's family.
Yeah, well, you know, we really were. I mean, I feel like, you know, I was even part of Buddy's family. I wasn't fortunate enough to be in the family very long. You know, just shy of a decade. But
yeah,
that time I really looked at Buddy as a father figure. I mean, the man was such a wealth of knowledge. I loved nothing more than to listen to him tell stories.
Yeah.
When I got to go out with Buddy to an event or something, we were both got. I would always make sure I sat close enough to hear what he was talking about, because he told wonderful stories. That was one of the things I said I related the first time I met Buddy, and that's why I actually started hanging out in the sports office, was to hear Buddy tell stories. And they're so engaging, and he was so compelling when he told his stories. And just so down to earth, and he had a mind like a steel trap when it came to sports. We would sit there sometimes. I remember back about in 94, 95, we would sit there and throw questions at Buddy, just for fun, to see if he would, just out of the blue, off the wall things like, hey Buddy, Super Bowl III, what was the score in the third quarter? And he would tell us. He would tell you. And, by the end of the third quarter, it was so, and it would just blow us away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, I guess one of the reasons we were so tight was because we both had a strong passion for the Saints, but we both recognized the way the organization was going. And people would call and say that he didn't care about the Saints, he didn't love the Saints, because he was so critical, but it was all about love. It was all about him wanting them to be successful. And I remember telling him one time, I said, "But I know we're going to make it." I said, because, Buddy, I started out when I was a teenager cheering for the Saints, and now I'm 55 years old, and nothing has changed. And he said, "Well, Ken, I don't know if I'm going to make it either." But, so he's gone on into glory. And I just hope and pray that the Saints finally wake up. Maybe he'll be an angel up there, and he can pull some strings.
One thing's for certain, whether he's gonna, hopefully he'll be that angel and pull those strings. But one thing's for certain, when they do finally make it to the Super Bowl, he'll have the best seat in the house.
Yes, you got that right. He's truly going to be missed, irreplaceable. I mean, there's an icon for the city of New Orleans, and not only limited to sports, but just an icon for the city as one of our great New Orleans. Great guy from New Orleans. Going to be missed.
Thanks, Ken. We appreciate it. You bet.
Thank you, Jim.
William and Thibodeau.
Yes, Dave. How are you?
I'm hanging in there, Todd. I'm glad I got Todd here by my side, and really glad that all y'all are calling in, and it's helping us get through it, I think.
Well,
gentlemen, the reason why I called is I wanted to relay a great Buddy story that involves me.
Go ahead.
Todd, what happened was in 1994, in May of 94, was the 10th anniversary that Mr. Jim Finks passed away. And I know Buddy really liked Mr. Finks and thought he was probably the best general manager the Saints ever had. And what had happened, I was at a radio station outside the New Orleans market, and I happened to send an email to Buddy that I was going to do a special about the life and times of Jim Finks with old sound bites. Well, Buddy called me from the WWL office and asked me if I could please get a copy of those sound bites and send it to him, because he had forgotten that it was Mr. Finks' 10th anniversary. And I told Buddy, sure, no problem, be glad to help you out. So I express mailed it to him the next day. He was kind enough to call me. And on that Friday, Mr. Finks' anniversary, he actually used all the sound bites for a 90-minute WWL radio special. And it was the biggest thrill I ever had, because I was able basically to help out Buddy,
Right.
pay tribute to a gentleman that many, many people respected. And the one thing I'm always going to remember about Buddy, because I consider myself a Saints archivist or historian, is that he was so honest with his feelings about what may or may not be wrong with the team. But at the same time, something you know very well is that he always wanted to bring humor into the situation when he thought it was appropriate. And I know many times on radio and television, he wouldn't hesitate to call Dr. Morgus to see how he could help the team. And, things along that line. It wasn't just the Bagsmith story. It was just countless ways. I know when he did the Hey Buddy D television show, he always figured out ways to make people laugh and at it from there. And
he did a whole "It's a Wonderful Life" skit, I believe, one
That's
time
right.
with Buddy about the Saints and so forth. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, guys, it was just hearing the news tonight is just rather overwhelming, and the fact that basically, if any one gentleman could be an institution when it comes to sports, it'd be Buddy. And like I said, I know you got a lot of calls lined up. So Dave, what I'd like to do for you and Todd and all the people at WWL. Tomorrow, I'm going to go through some of the archives I have of Buddy.
I wish you would do that. Listen, I'm going to put you on hold when we get done talking here, and I'm going to have one of our producers, I think Christian's going to pick up and get your number from you, and we'll get back with you, man, because I think that would be fantastic.
Well, thanks, and gentlemen, you're doing a great job tonight, and may God bless Buddy Diliberto.
Thank you. Thank you so much, William. We appreciate you calling.
William.
Thank you.
Another legend, and I know that he's hearing me say that, and he's probably blushing because he hates it when I say things like that about him. David Tyree.
Hey, Dave. How are you? Hey, Todd.
David.
I'm so glad you called, man.
Well, I was listening. I was in shock. I was actually getting ready to go to bed, and about after 10 when our operations director, Diane Newman, called, and of course she, like all of us, were just heartbroken.
Yeah. Well, how do you hear someone tell you Buddy D has died?
Well, I mean, she was so upset. It took me a few minutes to get it out of her. To find out what had actually happened, and so I went over to her house for a little bit, and then she's gone into work. And but
she's here now.
Just when she first told me, I'm like, I had to repeat it because I couldn't. It was like not Buddy D's not gone.
Yeah, Corey Johnson called me to tell me.
Yeah.
And
Phil Hoover, our GM, called me, and I the same response. It was just, what? You're kidding.
Yeah. So. I think there are a lot of people who are going to wake up in the morning in this city and be absolutely shocked that haven't yet heard. So it's to Peggy and to the family, our condolences. And I was sitting here listening to people, and it's really a great tribute. It's so nice to hear people call in and do this memoriam for Buddy. But
now, do you remember? You remember your first or one of your first Buddy experiences? I mean,
I've been trying to think back. I mean, because I was at WWL when Buddy first came in after Hep Glotty had passed away, and Buddy D was taking over the show. So I've really been trying. I mean, the Richard Nixon story. He loved it. As you mentioned, he loved to tell that.
He hung up on Richard Nixon. He thought it was a prank.
Well, in the White House, and I don't remember now why, but in the story, why Richard Nixon was calling the station, who even he wanted to talk to. It wasn't Buddy, but Buddy would have to be there, and he was answering the phone. And the White House actually called back, and they had to say, look, this is really the White House, and this really is Richard Nixon on the phone line with you. Please don't hang up again.
But
you had the honor every night. I mean, your show was ending as Buddy's was beginning, so you and he got to see each other every night.
Every night, yeah, and it was great to to see him walk in the room and all the things we've been talking about, the passion, the fire in the belly, and all that. And I can't think of anyone really. I've been trying to think while this evening's been going on and listening to people call in. I don't really think there's another person in the city or in this region who's better known or more beloved than Buddy D. I mean, this is going to be a real shock for a lot of people who haven't yet heard the news, and they wake up tomorrow morning and hear on the radio or TV or wherever. It's going to be a big shock. And
absolutely.
And the one thing, because I know a lot of people want to talk, the one thing that, besides the humor and the passion and all the things that people are using to describe Buddy D, all of which are appropriate, the thing that I also think people who didn't really know him should know, he had one of the truly, genuinely sweetest and just gentle souls that I've ever been around. He was just a really, really genuinely sweet, gentle man, and that's what I'll always remember about Buddy.
You know, I saw Buddy many times get very passionate, but I never saw him get so angry that you thought, wow, this guy's enraged. No, he got passionate.
Yeah, he didn't get mad.
He never got really mad. He was determined.
And can be stubborn.
Oh yeah. Sure he could.
But it was passion. It wasn't anger. You're right. So we'll truly miss him. And
that's what I said. Some of those heated discussions between him and Kenny Wilkerson in the sports office would a lot of times be diffused with Buddy just going, you're a squirrel.
Yeah. And I'm like you. I can't wait because there's so many great classic Buddyisms that we forget them. And I can't wait for Kenny, who's got a lot of them archived away, and others to start pulling those out and start hearing those.
Yeah, it won't be too long now. We're going to get some of those on the air soon. So.
Well, you guys are doing great, and I just wanted to throw my little bit in and to let people know that he was a truly gentle, sweet soul, and a really, really, really nice man.
Thank you, David.
It certainly was, David. Thank you.
We love you, man.
You too. Have a good night.
Get some rest, Dave.
Thanks, David. David Tyree, a legend in his own right.
You know, and I got to, when I've been filling in for David, some days when he couldn't finish the show earlier on in his treatment, and I would be on till 5. I got the experience of Buddy walking in, and that's probably, you know, as I said, humble, and that's what gentle. I think that best describes how Buddy is, because even though Buddy has been around this business for so long, television, newspaper, television, and radio as well, it was always amazing, and he was like, he had a childlike quality about him. When it came to radio, it was still magical to him. He didn't really understand how it worked. He just knew that, you know, it was there.
Yeah, he sat there, he talked, and it went out.
He would walk in every day. He would walk in. I'm sure he would do this with Dave. The show was still going on, and the door would open, and Buddy would walk in and lay his stuff down right here and just wave, how you doing, and walk out.
You're trying to do a radio show.
And we're talking, and just out of the corner of your eye, here comes Buddy creeping in. He'd lay down all his sports stuff and walk out.
Well, Kenny Wilkerson is joining us now. Very few people got the honor and pleasure of working with Buddy so closely and enjoying all of the different emotions that Buddy had to offer. Kenny, I know that you're just leaving Buddy's family. How you doing, man?
Yeah, good. Good. And that's a good way to put it. It was very much an honor. And I can't say that enough, and I can't emphasize that enough. It was a privilege, and I'll always treasured the days. You know, we had our moments, and I even treasured those, because we would get after each other, you know, about a lot of different things, and we'd have a lot of good times sitting in that office.
I was telling some of those stories about, we could hear you guys sometimes in the sports office going at it, but it was always it was never mean-spirited. It was in good fun.
Two passionate guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was, you know, it always definitely told me not that that he wouldn't say it, because he would say it, but I knew he loved me, and I loved him, and it was an honor to work with him. It was a privilege and an honor, and it's something that obviously like everybody's saying. I mean, it's like losing a family member. I mean, he's family to he was family to this entire city.
Yes, he was.
You all were over at the hospital. You and Mark, and I know Corey came over there, and
Right.
and all the other folks here.
Yeah.
Buddy's family,
How they holding up?
how they're
Doing all right?
as best as can be expected.
Oh, I think really good. I think really good. His son Mike and Debbie and Kathleen and Chris got there, and his brother Joe, and everybody was there, and of course Miss Peggy, and I mean, as best to be expected. But actually, in many regards, I think everybody was doing pretty good. There was a few of us standing outside the hospital just a few minutes ago as we were leaving, and to Paul Smith, who was extremely close to Buddy.
Oh, yeah.
And Weldon, the Gator, he made it over, and he was one of Buddy's favorites, and we're all, it turned into for a few minutes another Buddy roast. And I mean, we were, the stories. We'll be telling stories, and people will be telling stories and talking about Buddy for forever.
All right.
Thanks, Kenny, man, and hang in there.
Yeah,
we appreciate it, and I know that we'll be talking to you a whole lot this weekend as we. I think we have no choice but to continue to pour out our hearts and our love to what a great man Buddy D was.
Well, I'm sure that even those who would criticize, and those who would knock and get mad at him for things, knew and would do those things because they knew what he was saying was the truth. They just didn't want to hear it.
You're including yourself in that number, huh?
Oh, absolutely. There's no question about it. I mean, he was. When I got in the car, I heard a couple of different callers and stuff, and one gentleman was talking about how gentle of a man, and that's exactly right. I mean, he was a lot of people. I would tell people this all the time. People were, of course, people get mad at me, and they scream and holler at me about the football team when they're losing.
Well, sure, it's your fault. It was always Buddy's fault and your fault. Yeah.
Right, and they would scream and holler at me about Buddy, sometimes, and I would always, all the time, go back and forth with. I mean, I could have walked out of the office after having a knockdown drag out with him, and have somebody jump me about him, and I would be like, no, you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know. You just don't know him. He's the nicest man. He cares deeply about the about the Saints and about the people and about the fans, and I mean, this is a man who went to church every morning.
Every single day.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, he had his routine. I mean, and I was up, got the coffee, got the paper, check the line, go to church.
Got the line.
Go to
the
church.
line.
Go to
Get
church.
something to eat. Check the line.
Do you remember the story about of him trying to explain a novena to Jim Mora? When he said that he needed to explain that's what the Saints needed was a novena. And Jim said, "What's that?"
Right.
Yeah, well, Buddy was passionate about everything in his life, and I think your jesting there just really pointed it out. Buddy was passionate about sports and the Saints. He was passionate about his religion and his spiritualness, and he was passionate about his betting. Everything Buddy didn't do anything halfway. Buddy did everything 100%.
Guys, I never saw the man happier than the night that just about a year ago when LSU was playing for the championship.
Oh, yeah.
And while the show was going on in the New Orleans Center, I mean, just, throngs of fans coming by and would see Buddy. And, of course, everybody was fans were in a great mood because LSU was playing for the title and all that. And, I mean, they would just stop, just drove after drove, and hundreds of them, and start chanting, Buddy, Buddy, Buddy. And then the show ended, and I took a bunch of pictures of him that night. People were giving him Chinese hats to put on, like for the Chinese bandits and everything, and it was priceless. And he was just having the time of his life. And then we left the New Orleans Center and made our way over to the Dome. And, of course, it was about 2 hours. They'd opened the gates, so the Dome was filling up with people. And we were going through the corridors and the concourses trying to get to the auxiliary press box, and it was just packed with people. And, I mean, just one right after another, just 10s and 50 and 20 and 30, 100 people. They'd all start chanting, Buddy, Buddy, Buddy. And he had a smile from ear to ear, and he was the happiest. I mean, I've seen him happy, but I never saw him happier than that night.
You know, that meant...
All I kept thinking was, I was so happy for him. I felt so good, so glad to see him that happy. But I kept thinking, I can't imagine what it would be like if this was the Super Bowl and the Saints were getting ready to play.
You know, and he just as recently, I remember talking to him about that he described that game. And I think what you've just told us gives me a little insight as to maybe that had something to do with it as well. But he described watching LSU win the national championship in the Superdome as one of the greatest things he'd ever been a part of in his life.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, when he would, the next night, when he was on doing Sports Talk and started telling that story, I mean, you know, about how he felt about it, I mean, I immediately was like, oh, yeah. And I can remember telling, you know, our boss, Diane Newman, just how, I mean, and we would talk so much about him, and that story just, you know, it made her laugh. It made both of us practically cry because we were so happy for him.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, everybody was happy for LSU. I was happy to go see a national championship and all that, but believe me, I was 100 times happier for him, and just the look that he had on his face that night, and then the night, you know, the night of the roast. I mean, it was something to watch him sitting there and.
Yeah, he had a big grin on his face for that.
Oh, yeah.
He took it real well.
Yeah.
And you guys didn't hold back much.
No.
No, you guys let Buddy have it.
Oh yeah. And he got after everybody pretty good that night. You know, he told his stories too. So we'll have I'm sure hours and hours and days of storytelling. And that's what not a doubt in my mind. That's what he would have wanted and does want, and I know that there's no question that right now he's laughing, and he's also probably trying to find a way to check the line.
Check the line. Thanks, Kenny. For those of you just joining us here on WWL New Orleans, Kenny Wilkerson there on the phone. I'm Dave Cohen along with Todd Manassas, and we're talking about the life of Buddy D. After learning late Friday night, Buddy D, at the age of 74, died from an apparent heart attack, surrounded by his friends, his family, and so many people who loved him, that knew him personally. And now, for those folks who loved him so many years, who got to know him as a newspaper writer, as a television, sports reporter, and anchor, and here on the radio doing so many things. Todd, we've pulled that. Buddy said just a few months ago, quoting here, this was on The Point After with Buddy D. When you go to heaven after you die, tell St. Peter you're a Saints fan. He'll say, come on in. I don't care what else you've done. You've suffered enough. One of a kind, Buddy D. One of the of working with Buddy D. Sitting right alongside him was our own NFL analyst, Mike Detillier. Good early morning, Mike. Thanks for calling us on such a difficult time.
Yes, it is, and certainly I'd like to, you know, give my condolences to Peggy and the kids, and you know, we spoke Wednesday night, and I knew at that time he was telling me he was a little under the weather, and in fact, we actually had plans to go eat out Thursday night, and because of some other circumstances, we had to cancel. But you know, he meant a lot to me because I grew up watching him, you know, on television. And I always kid him about this, is that we used to go to catechism on Monday nights, and it would last from 6:30 to 7:30. And Buddy had From the Press Box television show on from 7:30 to 8 before the Monday night game. And I was always after my dad, hurry up and floor it so we can get home to see the From the Press Box show. We almost caused about 8 accidents trying to get home to watch him. And it was so great to work with him. And, I've been very fortunate to work with a lot of people in this business, and some very recognizable names and faces. And I can say I've never had more pleasure doing a show and working with someone like I have with Buddy. I mean, we had a special chemistry between one another. And last year, a gentleman wrote an article about myself and the draft and everything else. And I made the comment, and I've said it tonight many times, and people have called me. My dad lives virtually next door to me. There are some days that, for whatever reasons, we don't talk. We may not see one another, whatever. There are very few days that I can say that I haven't talked to Buddy. He hasn't called me or tracked me down somewhere. No matter where I've been, he's been able to somehow, some way get through. And so, it just was a special relationship working with him. And I saw this on a television show a year or so back. They interviewed, and this was from years back, Sammy Davis Jr., and he talked about how special it was to be on stage with Frank Sinatra. And when the Rat Pack was together with Peter Lawford and Dean Martin, Sammy and Frank, and it touched me because that's how I felt about Buddy.
He was your Sinatra.
It was like being with Sinatra. He was a special individual, a very kind guy, the kindest individual you could ever imagine, a very gentle guy, but very passionate about what he believed in. And that's something that, he has spoken many, many times to me about, that a lot of times he doesn't see a lot today. And that's something when I talk to young writers or people getting into the television business, I try to pass along to him, because that's something he passed along to me, to be passionate about what you do. And that's something you can say he had great passion in his work. But I love working with him, and I love the guy. I mean, he was really, truly special to me.
Mike Detillier, our NFL analyst, joining us here on WWL 870 AM, the Big 870. I'm Dave Cohen, and we learned just a few hours ago that Buddy D has died at the age of 74 from an apparent heart attack. Mike, Emile Gaucher is here in the studio with me, and you and Emile, every Monday night during the season, got to spend time with Buddy D on the radio. And Emile, one of our account executives, you got to hang out with these two guys, with this Sammy Davis Jr. and Frank Sinatra.
The Bet Pack.
Emile, don't tell him anything that we said at the table, because that'll get us in a lot of trouble. Well, at least get me in a lot of trouble. Put it to you that way.
That was special times, and such an honor, to be with you and Buddy, and hear the dialogue between you two, and the incredible relationship you all had. It was special, and just to get to witness that on a weekly basis was very, very nice.
Yeah, and again, in saying this, I mean, for a generation of us who watched him on television and to see in the radio business, and he told me this many times, that, he never thought the radio thing would ever take off. And it's amazing. He got more popularity out of that than what he was on television. And anywhere you went with him, people would holler at him or come up to him and want to shake his hand and so forth and so on. And Emile knows this story, and I've really razzed him about it for quite some time. About 2 years ago, we're coming out of the elevator at Casino Magic, and this elderly gentleman comes up to me and shakes hands with me and says, he had saw me on a television show and had listened to me on the radio, and he says, I really want to meet Buddy D. And so Buddy's behind me, so I tell Buddy that the gentleman would like to meet him. And so Buddy sticks out his hand, start talking, and he tells Buddy that, listen, he said,
I've been watching you since I was a little boy on television. Now, the look on his face, he looked back at me, and I couldn't help it. And I asked the guy, I said, well, how old are you? And he said, I just turned 91. I said, well, Diliberto, you better show me some driver's license, because something ain't right here. This guy's 91, and he's watched you since since he was a little boy. And I really razzed him about it for quite some time. But the one thing I always...
But that's how we felt about Buddy. No matter how old you were, you felt like he'd been a part of your life your whole life.
But that's the one thing I take from him, is his sense of humor. And Emil can testify to that. He was always great with a story, and that's something that'll always live with me. The stories and his humor, because he always would, try to put a good face on things no matter how bad it was. And he had that way of kind of cheering you up. When things were down, he would always, try to put that sense of humor in there. And that's one thing I will take from him, is his sense of humor, because he was something special with that. And he had some stories that I know sometimes it was what I would say a little exaggerated, but we all know it got to the point, and we all had a good laugh about it.
And such a great sport, Mike, because he appreciated being on the end of a joke as well. I think it was 2 years ago. Buddy would do some live copy during the second guest show. And we would kind of do it spontaneously, okay, what do y'all need to, what are we going to be promoting? And I looked around the room and I saw a sign up, and the sign had Engelbert Humperdinck. So, I had to write a quick 30-second spot, and in the 30-second spot I wrote Engelbert Humperdinck 7 times. And I handed the copy to Buddy right before...
That was a cruel joke.
And Buddy looked at it and he said, I'm not going to read this. But he did, and he actually did it flawlessly.
He said it every time, right?
Every time.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
He told me,
Humperdinck. I couldn't say that 7 times in 30 seconds.
He said, Mike, break it down for me. Break it down. How are you going to break it down? And, and we had a good laugh about it. But the other one was when Charo appeared there. And, he had read the copy, and he looked at me and he said, is that the coochie gal? Yeah. And then that's how he went over the air with it. And, again, that's something I'll always remember him by, is his humor. And he always, to me, he was kind of the pulse beat of this community. He loved New Orleans. He loved Louisiana. He would want nothing more. And this is the other call. A lot of people say, he was a Saints basher and everything. Mm-hmm. And he loved this team as much as anybody. And he wanted to see this team succeed more than anybody I've ever been around. But he was so passionate that if things weren't exactly right, and that's what, he was one of the first guys in this area to really stick his neck out and say, hey, listen, things are going wrong. And I'm talking about back during the John Meekum era. And, at that time, journalists, it was a different world. And so I think that's basically what made him special. I think if he felt that very strong about something, he would say it. And he wasn't afraid to go through some repercussions about it. And that's one thing he always would go and tell me numerous times. Hey, listen, you feel strongly about something, you say it. Don't, say it 3 years down the line, 2 months down the line, say it now. And that's something that I'll learn from him, that, hey, listen, if you feel that strongly about something, to say it. And, again, it's a major loss to his community because of just what he meant to everybody here. And how many people would tell me how much they enjoyed when the Saints were winning to listen to the Point After show. And, and everything with Abdul and everything else about that. And he was such a guy that would almost stick his finger on the pulse beat of this community. And, like I said, personally, I'll miss him a lot.
Yeah, I think we're all going to miss him. And the gang keeps kind of growing here in the studio. I'm Dave Cohen. We've got on the line with us Mike Detillier. In the studio here, Emile Gaucher, account executive here at WWL. Todd Manassas, which you've all gotten to know recently, filling in for David Tyree.